you might pop something else loose or vibrate something else. So if you use screws, it's great. And then what you do is then you take a knife and you cut that loose stuff off, and then tap the nail that's there with a hammer, or if it's a screw, push it in a little bit farther. And then you get some spackling and you go over that and touch it up. The trick is to that is just keep the spackling smooth. I say let everybody know to put on thin coats of spackling or drywall compound. If there's a crack in the plaster, if we have older homes and they're plastered, they got hairline crack. If you take drywall, or actually for one thing, I would use plaster on a plaster for a plaster repair, not drywall compound. I use plaster. Plaster is a harder substance. It's powder. I actually have a bag of it here. I can show you, and I'm going to put up a display here too. But this one is actually called Quick Set at 5. You see a number on those bags. The number represents how many minutes, approximately how many minutes it takes for that material to harden. Once it, I mean, you got 5 minutes once you mix it up. So there's 5, 20, 45, 90, and that each one of those is how many minutes. So if you use 90, you got an hour and a half, something like that to work it. So, that's what I always recommend is just get a number 90. But it's a powder form. You mix it up and you apply it. Again, everything thin coats. You want to clean out the groove like this right here. When I bring the display up here, I'll show you there too. Clean out the groove. This is pretty aggressive groove that you're making right here. There's a hairline crack in that right there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a hairline crack. If you try to put some plaster over top of that, it's just going to crack again because none of the plaster really embedded down into that crack. So you just take something, and what I would use is I would take a dull, what I call it, it's an older flat screwdriver, and I would just drag, just kind of force it up in there and drag on the surface. You're not going to dig it out hard. Chunks aren't going to fall unless it's already loose anyways. And if that's the case, you want to take those loose parts out. And then when you put some plaster over top of that, you trowel it in, it's going to go into that crack, and it actually now can bond by grabbing a hold of the side walls of that crack and not just lay on the surface. So then it can just crack again. All right. Showing you these pictures real quick because then we can get into some of the other stuff. The nail, yeah, hang a picture on the wall, and then we don't want it there anymore, so we pull that nail out. I've seen a lot of spackling where they just, a homeowner, and I give everyone, 150% credit for the effort in trying to do this because, that's how we save and that's how we take what we have and make it better. But there are tips and there are tricks, and you can learn those, and that's what we share. So if you pull a nail, and I'm going to actually do this in just a few minutes. If you pull a nail out of the drywall, the paper on the surface is going to come out too, right? So you need to get that paper out of there. Best thing to do is you see right here, they're just taking a blunt. So this is a putty knife handle, and then just pushing it in and creating a little divot. Now you have no paper sticking out. You have just this little dish divot there, and you can take your spackling and go over that. And again, don't come outside of the surface of the paper. Put that first coat on, you're just filling the hole only. Then you let it shrink because it'll shrink as it dries down. And then you lightly sand, and then wipe that dust off from there, and then put another very thin coat on. So simple, but again, everything is simple to someone who's done it before, right? And again, that's what's so great about this, because we get to share with you so that you can do these things that probably maybe never imagined doing, or hey, that's great. So this is a plaster thing again. I'll bring that up here. So there's a hole in the plaster. I'll get it up here so you can see it. Forgive me for going the wrong way. Everything was backwards to me when I'm looking at this screen. So there's a hole in the plaster, and this is another one. And what I wanted you to see with this one right here in particular is you can see that the particles, those darker grayer particles, are larger than the whitish colored particles on the surface. So when I talked about the plaster and having numbers, so also the lower the number, the larger the particles are in it. So if you're using a lower number, you're using that to fill a void, right? You got this void, and I'm just going to fill it up, and it's going to harden. Just be sure that you don't come out above the surface as you take your trowel or across there. Just let it be on the surface only, because you don't want to try to have to sand it off. That's the biggest thing that error that's made is people put too much on at one time. So then you let that dry, then you get a higher number. The higher number has smaller particles in it, so it's more creamy, and then that becomes your surface one, and that's just a nice thin skim coat over the whole repair. And if you had a larger repair, then you could take a piece of drywall, actually, instead of filling all that in with lots of plaster, take some drywall and just, spend a little bit of time and cut that to fit. Take a large piece of cardboard, right? Cut that piece of cardboard to fit the shape. And again, after, one thing is, I'll back up, you peel away everything that's loose. If it's loose, don't leave it there, because it's just going to crack. Peel away what's loose. Take a piece of cardboard and cut it to fit that shape. Lay that piece of cardboard on a piece of drywall that's thinner than the thickness of that wall, and then screw that in place. And then now your first coat of plaster would be to fill the void around the perimeter. And then next one, you put a couple of coats, actually, of plaster, and you just go over that whole thing. So it saves a lot of time, and it simplifies it, actually. So the hole in the drywall, that's going to be a big one we're going to do here tonight. Not big, but it's something that we teach in our class, so that everyone can do all this stuff at home. So I'm actually going to set a couple props up here in a minute and show you a few things. And so this is a patch that's put in. You're going to plaster or drywall or compound over it. I'm going to talk about some how to apply, how to sand, more sanding, and then just another trip, which is wet sponge. And this one, the last one, is the one I want you to remember not to do. Actually, we've all seen, if you've ever had a gravel driveway, and after a rain, you got mud puddles out there in the driveway, and then when it dries down, the sun shines for a couple of days, and then you just see this creamy, thin mud in the bottom of the driveway, or the bottom of that mud puddles that are all cracked, right? Just think of that just like drywall compound. It's very thin and it's very creamy. And if you put too much in there, then what it does is when it dries, it cracks, it separates. Everything shrinks when it dries. So that picture was just way too much compound or drywall compound on there, and it just dries and cracks, and it just creates so much more work, lots of work. And again, actually, I'll tell you that this Saturday, for tomorrow, we're going to have a workshop that is here. I'm going to do hands-on what I'm going to do here this evening. This is, let's set a few props again. So this is a display that the students in here actually have. If I looked around the room right now, I'd see some of these all staged on tables, getting ready for Saturday's class. Everyone gets a board in front of them, and you're going to do what I'm going to do this evening. There's a hole we have a hole at home in the drywall. So we're going to learn how to take a patch and trace it around the hole. Then we're going to cut out the hole, put some wood strips in, and then apply some compound. So that's what we're going to do. We're also going to, over here on the side, there's a horizontal seam right here. And if you can see that piece of tape, we're going to put some tape on there. And then I'm going to show you a few things about as far as actually applying that tape or the compound on there. If you look at this, what I want you to see is that, and this is just our visual prop, but once I take it away, you won't see this until I actually do it. But you put a thin coat. So you can see this section right here across this seam is, let's just say, 3 inches wide. That tape is 2 inches wide. And so you put that on there, and then you put that tape right into it. You take the trowel and go across it, take out the excess. Don't think that you got to fill it all up and get it all flush with the floor or with the wall on the first coat. You're just after filling that splice where that drywall comes together, getting that tape to go on there. Then what happens is that when that tape dries, when the adhesive or the compound dries, like I said before, it shrinks, so it draws inward. And then you take a wider trowel, and you can see that it's wider here now, and you go across that, doing the same thing. And I don't know if you can notice here, but I hope it catches your eye with all seeing these different props. But when two pieces of drywall go together, their edges are all tapered. So this bottom section right here, this is the high spot. So this is all flat, and then it tapers inward. This one up here, this is flat, this tapers down. So there's like a cavity right there, concave all across there, so that you can actually build this up. All right. A little bit on the outside corner right here, a corner bead, aluminum corner bead. They make these out of, it's not aluminum, it's actually galvanized. The corner beads out of metal. They make them out of plastic, and they also make them they look like the drywall paper, but inside is actually a metal corner. So that way you just put your compound on the corner and you push that into it, and then take your trowel and come down, and it's the same as applying just like this without having to put fasteners and stuff in it. Lots of different things. I'm going to show you the back to that plaster one now. So I'm going to move around a little bit with different things, but I want you to get good visuals of them, I guess, and then we're going to settle in on doing that repair. So again, this is that bag. This has a number 5. You mix this up. It says 5. I always figure less time. So when you mix this stuff up, you think, how much am I going to need? First, do just a small batch and use that up, and you can tell, well, wow, that really set up in less than 5 minutes because it's really, really hot out today, or whatever the case may be. So experiment with it and then use it. I don't know if you can see this or not, but so all of this could be repaired. You can see where a piece is falling out. We put some screws in there, and when we're teaching here, just to show that, yeah, you can put a screw through there, it might crack, but now you can fill that void. You can see this. I hope you can see that there's actually a horizontal line. There's actually a horizontal line in here, right here, here. But you can see this one is kind of dug out. Someone was already taken a flat screwdriver and drug it across there a few times. And as you can see, what you're trying to do in a crack is just open it up a little bit on the surface, so that when you drag that trowel across there, I only have a wide one. So when you drag that trowel across there, you're only filling that. You're not laying any on the surface. Let's just stick with just filling the cavity, okay? I'm going to show you the thing with hoping to. There we go. So I got a nail here, and I'm going to put this nail in this board, probably right over here. Well, I'm going to come down here where there's some drywall, if you can see that spot right there. So I'm just going to put that nail in there, and we'll just hypothetically, there's a picture hanging there or a clock, and then later you want to pull that out of there. So you take the nail out, and then this right here, if I can find you, this right here is what you end up with, where that paper is all, there we go, where that paper's torn, right? So you don't want to just try to brush it down. You don't want to just brush it down and go over it with some spackling or some compound. I'm just going to put a little bit on there. And if you look, when I go across that, when I go across that, I can't make the actual paper disappear right there, right? I can't. What I would have to do is put a thicker layer of this compound on there. So what would I do if I was coming to your house and you were hiring me to do this? Which, I mean, that's what I used to do years ago, right? But now I'm sharing with you. That's what's so cool about this. We have a ball peen hammer. That's what this is, a ball peen hammer. You saw that picture with the putty knife. You can take anything that has a rounded or blunt end on it like this, but I always just take a ball peen hammer. And typically, and I'm not gonna. Typically, what I would do is I would set the ball peen hammer right on that divot or that where that nail was at, and then I would hit this end with my hammer. But I think that would make quite a ding in here this evening. So I'm just going to try to tap it in. All right, just a ball peen hammer. So what I did is I created a divot. So it's all below the surface. Now, when I put this on here and I come across, the only thing I'm doing is filling the hole. That's it. Just filling that hole. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I can see it all right. There we go. Right? There's not much there. You don't see no paper. You don't see anything. But one thing, again, you're filling the hole only. That's going to dry and it's going to shrink into the center a little bit. Then I'm going to put it on another coat and let that dry. And there's no more divot showing after it dries. I'll just lightly sand it and then it's ready for primer and paint. So that's the tip right there, is just use a ball peen hammer or something and make a divot. All right. One of the things when you're putting screws, when you're putting screws in a board, no matter what it is, if you're re-drywalling a whole room, or if you're re-drywalling doing a patch, or no matter what it is, corner bead, when you're putting the screw in, you always want to make sure that that screw, just goes just below the surface of the paper. Here are several, just below the surface of the paper. What you don't want to do is run that screw head all like halfway in, just breaking it, because what happens is this plaster or this drywall board is a 1/2 inch thick, and it is porous, right? It's, it has air bubbles and stuff in it. And the thing is when you drive that screw head all the way through into this, you start crushing the gypsum that's here in the middle, this material. So in all reality, it just lost its holding power. Will it still stay there? Probably so, but it lost its true holding power. So you take those screws in so they're just below the surface of the paper. So the head is. And the other thing is to make things easier on you for finishing, you always make sure that the screws are just below the surface of the paper and not outside of it. Because if it's outside of it, do one more thing here. I'm gonna back this screw over here out intentionally, right? Because we fill the screw holes too when we're doing a repair. And then I would have some plaster or some drywall compound, and then I'm going to be drywalling or putting this compound over it. And every time this trowel comes across it, it's going to do that. It's going to hit the screw. It's going to hit the screw, and it's going to do that. So now, only way for me to fix that, or no, not the only way. I'm going to tell you the right way to fix it. But what typically happens is we just put it on thicker. We put it on thicker so that we can, so we can actually go over that. But what we're doing is building it up, making more work, making more sanding that none of us want to do, really. So what you do is, I'm going to take that off of there, is anytime before you even start, in my thought, is you take your trowel and you just go over the wall wherever there are screw heads. And if it chunks that, then hey, turn it in. Just grab that cordless drill. You saw what that looked like. All I want to do is turn it back in where it was. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. In the same spot. And now you see that? It's just like the divot down below that I was talking about down there. Just all it is, I'm filling that divot. A lot less material, a lot less headache, a lot less sanding. Okay, so just use your clean trowel and just go across them. And if you hear tunk tunk, well then turn them in. All right. So we talked about the main patch. We talked about the nail, pulling the nail out, the dry or the plaster, and the nail pop. The nail pop, I showed you that with a picture, but excuse me, it's the same concept. Turn that screw in, draw it down, take that piece out, cut that piece out where it was popped, and then go over that with your compound. All right. So one more time, I want to show you this just quickly. A hole. Here's the hole. We have a patch, and we get a piece of drywall, and we're going to use it as a patch. It's then once that's cut out, there's got to be wood strips around that. So we're going to have some strips of wood, some plywood here, and then we cut that to fit, we screw them in there, put our patch in there, and we start doing the adhesive. So I'm going to show you all of those on another board right here. So there's the board I'm gonna work on, this one right here. So I'm hoping that everyone can see this okay. I hope you can see it okay enough to get a good idea as to what happens here. And I'm gonna do some tape here. I'm gonna do some tape in this corner or the inside corner so you can get an idea of how to actually do that and do this repair. So to do the repair, again, I mentioned you need that, but the other thing we need is a keyhole saw. So it's just a drywall saw basically, and handle with a blade on it, the teeth pointing forward, right? And I have sanding stuff here too. I am going to show you some tips and tricks on the sanding. As I mentioned before. So this piece right here, what I'm going to do is, so this was cut. Is it square? I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify a corner of this patch. Then I'm going to place it up over that hole, kind of centered on it. And then I'm going to identify the same corner as that patch. So when I cut this out and I go to put this back up in there, I can line it up easily. So I'm going to put this here. Drag the pencil line, excuse me for stepping in front of you, across it. All right, and then there's what I'm gonna cut out. So I'm gonna take this keyhole saw, and I'm just gonna go. It has a point on it, right? So what I do is I take this point and I just shove it right into the paper, right through the drywall, wiggling it through until those teeth come in, and then I just saw it, okay? So I'm going to start there and just move it up and down, and it'll go right through. So now, you can see that's not too bad. I have this up on a pedestal, so unlike your walls at home, this moves a little bit when I'm working on it. All right. I'm trying the best I can to stay out of your way. Maybe you let that fall down on the wall, huh? Well, that was that part. Then remember the X? I put this up here and say, well, how did I do? Don't drop it in the wall, right? How did I do? Pretty good, actually. So when that piece goes in there, it's got to fasten to something. So what we do is we take wood strips like this, and we just, well, actually, what you wanted is some of it to hang down below and some of it up above. So I put it on here just over the hole, and I give myself something to use as a guide, is how far it is both ways once I got it in there, because I'm just guessing. Maybe it's there, maybe it's there, because I can't see in the wall. So that just gives me an idea. So I want it to be behind this, but out here, because I'm going to put screw here and put screw up above. So it would be, you know, something like that. All right. One of the things that, and I've done this in the past, is I would take a long screw, and I don't have one here. I take a long screw and I would put it right in the center of this. Then when I have this, when I set it down in there, I feel like I got a handle, so I don't drop it down in the wall, because if I drop it in the wall, I'm not going to get it back. So what I like to do is start the screws where they're going to be. So this one I want to be down below. This one up above. Then I grab that board, slip it back in there, kind of center it where I want it to be, and then just squeeze. All I'm doing is going to squeeze right here, the board to the back side of that drywall, and then just notice I slowed that trigger right down. Turn it to get it going. Once it pierces into the wood, just slow it right down so that screw doesn't draw in all the way and just crush the paper and the gypsum in the middle, like I mentioned before. It's just below the surface. Actually, I'm going to leave one out intentionally. And I'm going to put this. That's about where my pencil line is. Just below the surface, right? And then here's my patch again, remember? There, and there it is. Okay. So now this, I'm just going to put two screws, one on this side and one on this side. But before I do, another trick is to get these smooth, because we want a smooth wall, right? We don't want to see where that patch was. We probably, you know, some of us have seen that before, where someone did a patch and you can always see where it was. It's kind of like pulling the nail out of the paper and seeing where the spackling was. So when I was sawing this, then obviously I was fraying that paper all along the edge of it, right? And then maybe this patch has a little bit of fray, but I want to make sure that it doesn't. So what I do is I take a utility knife, and if you feel it across here, when you do this, we come to our class, or when you do it at home, or you come to our class, you'll see that you can feel the frayed paper on there. So I just take just a regular utility knife, and all I'm going to do is just drag it right there and just like peel off just that little bit of the corner. So, I mean, this is really small stuff, but that's all I'm taking off. But that's the frayed paper from the cut. One thing I was doing right there, you know, you can come across and pull it, but if you get, you know, like, you know what, my knife is dragging. Just when you do it, push in, push in, push in. You know, here I'm coming across and dragging out, but just you have more control of this knife if it gets feel hung up, just pushing in on it. So like right there, I'll start that. I'll come across there, And instead of just going across, I'm pushing inward as I'm going across. All right, there are no frays there. Just like that. All right, and I'm actually going to do the same thing to this, and just from the safety standpoint, I can't lay this down on the table and do all that because that's what I would do, but I'm just going to push this away from me, and you can see the slightest little, the slightest little bevel there. You see it. If you look at the top up here, you can see that the paper is inward a little bit from when that was cut. So that is what I'm making go away. Remember, you can come here and do this. We are so grateful to KDL for helping us be able to share. And Home Repair Services has been doing this for many, many years. Organization has been around for 41 years. And we're, if you see our logo, it's Home Repair Services, resources for homeowners. Part of those resources would be education. So let's show folks how to do some of this stuff, because sometimes I think that's the things that keeps us from doing something is we're not sure how to do it or have the confidence or trusted advice on how to. All right, so I put the X over here so it's not fitting, so I want to put it over there. So everything is going to work good right there. But the one thing I want to do before putting this in there is I want to put some of the compound on the back side of this, all right? Because it's almost, this compound when it dries is going to be, like an adhesive, right? So what I'm going to do is just put some compound in there right up against that board. Some will put it on the back of the drywall, on the back of this, and put it up in there. One of the things I learned real quick many, many years ago is that the different carpenters that I worked with, and back in I was going to say learning days, but aren't we learning every day? But they had their own techniques. Not saying they were wrong, just that, because they all got the same result. So I just like to have all the way around there, no matter what, if there's a board there or not, put something there. All right. So there it is. When I put it in on this side, this is going to get squished down. So just to clean off my trowel, I'm also going to put some there and there. I got some at the top and the bottom. This will just add to it. So I'm going to stick it in there. And stick it in place. All right. The other thing is, so that's kind of like an adhesive, but you know what? I don't have to hang on to it now. I can get the drill, I can get the screws, and I can put a couple screws in there. So that board is on that side. You see how that drywall is coming out is because it's following the drywall screw hit the board, and it's not penetrated yet, but the screw is traveling out on the screw, and that's as far as it's going to go until the screw starts going in, and then just below the surface of the paper. I don't know if you can see that, but it's down, it's gone. And then I'm going to do one on this side. You can see that. Just draw it right in, pulled it right in. All right. So that is getting the patch in the hole. Now, just for the sake of things, what I'm going to do is, and we can't do this at home, right? But I'm going to turn this around so you can actually see what's in the wall. So inside the wall, what you did is you added those wood strips, and there's the patch with the adhesive, with the compound around there, and that's just going to work like an adhesive, like I said. All right. So now what I want to do is see if you catch this. Is remember you tell me. If you were here, you could, right? But I want to just clean everything off. And but right over here, what do we have? What do we have right there? Right here, that screw is out. This screw over here is in. That one's in. But if you just take this and go around there, you'll feel them. Huge tip. So just turn them in. And then now all is good. Now there's a slight little step right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another screw because I'm only noticing it on this bottom corner. So I have wood there. So I can add one there. And I can tell that it settled in because I can see the compound oozed out. So that means there was plenty enough behind it. There we go. All right. So right now what you see, I'm hoping you can, I'm going to try to bring this a little closer, but what we can see is that there's some compound here and here. All the screws are in. There's a gap up there, a gap down there, right? So the very first step that you want to do when you're doing this, and I can't say this enough, is use a thin coat. And so the first time going over this, what I want to do is only fill that gap and the screw holes. You get so much, or actually, you get so much, but you do so much less work by doing several thin coats instead of just trying to cover the whole thing at one time. See, I'm putting it on there, but then I'm scraping off all the extra. I don't want it there. I want this to dry like it is. And I don't want to leave any buildup on there because then I have to sand it off, right? For me personally, the first time I do this, for the first one, I would always have a 3-inch wide putty knife or trowel, but I don't have it here with me this evening, so my apologies for that. So this is a 5-inch wide. So there's a little bit more material, obviously, that I'm dragging across there. But if you can see that all right, that's your very first coat. That's what you would want it to look like. You let that dry, and then that's what I say. Now we're in tomorrow. You would grab you would grab a clean trowel, and then actually I got a wider one over here. You would grab a clean trowel, and you notice this one's a little bit wider. So then, I mean, when the second coat, that's what I'm going to use anyways, is a wider trowel. So let's just say this was dry, and Mike doesn't want to sand it. You don't have to either. But what I do before I put on a second coat is because I know it's thin. I know it's not a lot of buildup. I take this trowel, and really all I do is I go around this. And if there are any high ridges at all, it would just knock them off. And then there are none. Now it's just flat and smooth. So then, now we're just pretending this is flat and smooth. Everything is good. It's already dried down once. So now I have day 2, scraped it off, got a wider trowel and come across it. Got way too much stuff. How's that for a lot, huh? But what you want now is to put thin coat over it. And what I try to avoid, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but right here you can see a thick edge. Right here you can see a thick edge. To my eye, any place I can see that is just some place that it's going to have to be sanded, or I'm going to have to build it up even higher. So with each coat, doesn't matter what it is, I try to make it look even. The more even I get it, the less work it is. So you can see that I added a little extra there that time. You let that dry down. And then the next day, again, just a little scrape. Then maybe on that one you just have to say, you know what, I'm just going to sand this one just a little bit. So maybe you do. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just telling you that the tip of, if you just scrape some of the stuff off, that's less stuff you have to sand if it's there anyways. So that would be that. And it's good to have each step wider trowel, but does it mean you have to have them in order to do this? No. I typically, like I said, start out with narrower than this, and then I'll go a little bit wider. And then now we're going to say it's the next day, and I'm going to go wider again, right? So one of the things that sorry about that. So I just went a little bit wider. You can see a little ripply right there. The thing is, I'm working in a very small area now with a wider trowel, and it's not quite as friendly for me to control. Thin coats. All right, and let that dry down. And if you have to put 4, you put 4. I would say the minimum you're going to do is 3. But if it needs that 4th, and if you do it in thin coats and it needs that 4th, then that's what it takes. But what you're going to end up with is a nice looking patch repair. All right. So that's that. The other thing I want to show you over here now is some tape. And again, I don't have my narrow one. So there are a couple different kinds of tape. There's the typical standard paper tape, awesome stuff. It works great. And then there's this fiberglass mesh tape, which has just a little bit of tacky stuff on the back side of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have just a little piece of each, and I'm going to put them right there, just so you can see. The thing is, with the paper tape, you put the adhesive on, or the compound on first, so you can stick it into it. With the mesh tape, you peel it off and you just put it on because it has a tacky substance behind it. And you cut it with a knife. So here's that piece of mesh right there, paper. So I'm going to put this mesh and just stick it on there. All right. There it is. Now you can actually see right through it. So when the compound goes in there, it's going to go right through the crack that's in there as well. For the paper, in order for it to stick, it's got to have some adhesive on there behind it. So where did my show go? So there's a trowel, right? And I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on there. of course, again, I got my big one. The thing about this is I can actually go all the way across that because that one's already on. So I want to see if you can see that, but what I said about this being flat and that beveling in, you can actually see it there because it's taking everything here and there, but leaving it there. So then all this, I'm just going to stick here, and then I'm going to go over it. A little bit more on top of it now. And what I find is you want to keep the blade wet with some of this top or compound. Otherwise, the dryness of it will actually drag the tape, and you don't want it to do that, right? So you can see the difference right there between those two. I mean, they both have tape on them. I'm stopping with it like that. I don't want to build up, again, you've heard me say that already over and over again. I don't want to build up a lot of compound on there. I'm going to let it dry, and then tomorrow add some more. And this would be tomorrow, right? And now I'm just going to go wider. You see those little grooves that I'm digging, and that's okay. And again, you notice I'm flaring right there. It's nice contact, right? And this, I'm only filling that void. That's what I'm after. And then you let that one dry, just like before. You just go a little wider. I don't need a lot of stuff like that right there. You probably can't see that, but there's a lot of definition in front of my eyes where it's like, oh my goodness, I got to sand all of that, or I'm going to have to. So I'm going to make sure that I'm taking it off and keeping what I want right here. If I end up going up there a little bit later, that's okay, but don't do it intentionally. Just to try to make it happen quick. And the other thing is it makes it so much easier for the sanding that you do because you have a nice flat surface right there. And then as far as for the inside corner, I'm going to just put some on here and just try to do that top one. You put some on that side, put some on that side. Grab a piece of paper. Fold the paper. It's got a seam right down the middle of it, a folding point. Fold it just like that, and then just stick it in there. And then you take here. Typically, again, right here, I wish I had my 3-inch wide one because I could show you. So I'm going to lightly, I'm not going to try to push it all. I'm going to take a little bit, some on each side, because I'm bringing this material out from behind it. I don't want to take too much. And I don't want to drag the paper. So like I said before. So one of the tips that I can tell you about this right here when you're doing taping, when you're going around, anytime you're applying this material, is put the pressure. I'm going to try to clean this off. Put the pressure on the outside corner of the blade. So like this right here, when I'm pushing this across there, try to clean up my mess just a little bit. Sometimes it's hard working in a 3-foot space. So when I take this knife and I go across here, and you saw me dragging like this and over here and over here, I'm using my thumb, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing on one side or the other. So I'm applying more, as like right here, when I'm coming across this one, and some of it is just a twist of the wrist, but I want, when I'm dragging this way, I want more pressure up here so I don't build up here. And when I'm coming across the bottom, I want more pressure down here. So when I come across, this doesn't have that edge to it. Same way with this. I'm going to come across down this, and I'm going to push more on this outside. Awesome again with a 3-inch. If I had the 3-inch and then the 5-inch, that would be great. So that's just a couple quick tips about applying this material. And on the outside corners, I mentioned the drywall. I'm going to set this aside a minute and set up that big sample one again. Same thing as like I said, the paper, then go a little bit wider, outside corner, a narrow one, and then go a little bit wider so you don't have so much sanding to do. So if I go back to my pictures, I think I might be running out of time. This class is usually 2 hours long actually here at Home Repair Services. So we try to cover everything good. And again, I can't thank Ken District Library enough for helping bring all this to your forefront. The one thing I'm going to try to get this picture up here close, because what I want to talk about a little bit is when you're sanding, there are different ways to do it. Don't put on so much, like I said, that you have to sand it all off. I'd rather put thin coats on. Take the putty knife or drywall trowel and push it across there, knock down any of those ridges, just get rid of them, let them just scrape off and drop instead of turning them into dust that's airborne and breathing it, or it just being there. Then the other is when you're sanding, there's different sanding things. We probably all have seen, the sanding, one of these kind of things, and they have a pad underneath. These things work awesome. You see that's what he's using right there is one of these, and just sanding that whole area. This one's well used, a sanding sponge, right? So I've used this a lot. They work great. One of the things about this is if you have a high spot, it's going to travel on the high spots. If it's high here and here, sometimes what you end up doing is you end up rubbing too much and you get the paper. You start scuffing the surface of the paper because you can't get that spot down, but it's too much in one place, and that's where that sponge is good. And then here's just another type of sponge. So this one would go up and down in that corner really good, right? It's got sand paper here, sand stuff here, and on both sides. These things really work nice. Then I even we've probably all seen these. We've all seen these type of sponge sanding blocks, different shapes. I like to hang on to them after I've used them a little bit for something else, because then it knocks down the real hard roughness of them. But these work nice too for getting in those corners for some of the fine sanding. And obviously you can tell by looking at this one, it's been used, a lot. So and it's quite simple. When you're doing the sanding, make sure you wear a mask. You don't want to be breathing the stuff. You don't need it in your lungs. And then what I was going to say about this picture right here is that what you could do is you could research this too, but what I was going to talk about is feather sanding, feathering the edges. Put my finger in the right place. Feathering the edges. So you're sanding everything, but you've got that edge. And what I say is anytime you can see an edge, when you pick a piece of, I'm going to show you both of these. Again, obviously, too much stuff down here. Look at all that, right? We need to put it on a thinner coat, all right? But this is what I'm talking about, an edge. When you see that edge right there, if you can see the edge anywhere on here, then you're going to see it under the paint and the primer too. And what you want it to do is disappear into the paper. And I'm just going to do a small spot on this one. And so this spot right here, all right, you can see that there's an edge. It's sanded down, but you can see there's an edge. What I want to do is just take this so you can see the difference. Is what I want it to do is not have an edge. I want it to disappear right into the paper. I don't know if you can see that, but now, I don't know if you, I hope you can see it, but if not, come to our class. But it just floats, it feathers right into the paper. So take the edge away. Right here you can see it. Right here you can see it, and right here you know where it's at, but you don't see a ridge. Okay, so take one of these sanding blocks. And I'm done with that. Make that go away. So you can see there it's feathered. The ridge disappears. Can't say that enough. So you're going to need a ball peen hammer for doing these little repairs. You're going to need some different widths of trowels. It's nice to have a 3-inch wide one for doing the seams, or 3 or 4. A keyhole saw, or you can just call it a drywall saw. A utility knife, some sanding blocks, some sanding pads, some wood strips, a flat, dull old screwdriver, to me, dragging through those cracks in the plaster. And again, when you're doing, to me, it's always when I'm doing plaster, I'm going to use plaster or repair. And if I'm doing drywall, then I'm going to use drywall compound as for that repair. The plaster is a harder substance, and it just works better with that. There's so much more, but I know I'm running out of time. So I hope that this was interesting. I hope you liked it. Check out Home Repair Services, our website, homerepairservices.org. Check out KDL's website for their upcoming workshops, and check out our Facebook. Okay, thank you so much, and hope to see you soon.
We want to thank you as well, Mike, for all the information, and now we can fix our homes. Our walls are going to look wonderful. Thank you.
Good. You're very welcome.
Yes, and thanks for all who are watching. Our next time with Mike in our home repair is going to be October 20, and we'll have our plumbing repair at that time.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye.